waffles in the morning, syrup sweet and slow. Golden stacks are rising, sunrise in the glow. Sticky choice so grand, breakfast on demand. Smile and take my hand in waffle wonderland.
Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Wafflecast. So today we're going to talk about Modern. I know we just had the regional championship in Charlotte with SCG. And boy, a lot of information to break down. So let's just jump into it, right? So they posted a day one metagame, like what the archetypes were, how many decks were submitted, all of this stuff, right? Big surprise. Breach was number one with 310 entries, okay? Quick math, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 1,200 people, right? I want to say it was roughly 12 or 1,300 people. So 300, 25%. Yeah. Okay. So there's a little over 1,300 people submitted or were in this tournament. 23% of the field was Breach, right? Insane amount. Another 15.5% was Orzhov / Esper Blink. 12% was Eldrazi Ramps. 10.7% was Energy, whether it be Boros, Jeskai, Mardu. And then we had Amulet Titan rounding up the top 5 decks at 6.8%. Then we had probably, I want to say about, quick math here, about 25 to 30% of the field was a mixture of other decks, where a really interesting number here, 236 other decks that couldn't be classified in this list of archetypes here. 17.5% of the field. Now that number is going to be important because I have a little side note with this when we get into this next image here, which is day 2, right? Out of the 310 decks submitted for Breach, 93 of them made it to day 2. Okay? That's almost a 33% conversion. It was like 31%, I want to say. That's huge. A third of the people who brought Breach roughly made it to day 2. And then with the day 2 percentage of what was actually left over in the field, 31% was Breach. That's a pretty high conversion. If you look, you also see Blink, Amulet Titan, Eldrazi, and Energy all at the top, but Eldrazi, out of the 161, only 29 made it. Like, that's insane. And then you look at Amulet Titan, out of the 92, 30 of them made it. So almost another 30% turnover into day 2 with that deck. So, like I said before, 236 classified as other, not any archetyped on here. Only 28 of those people made it to day 2. Knowing that information, right? That like 1%, not 1%, 10%, God, math is hard, right? 10% of the people that brought, let's quote unquote call it a rogue deck, made it to day 2, right? 10%. So when you go play in these bigger tournaments like this, if you don't play an established deck, your chances of getting into day 2 / top 8 are significantly reduced. Now, I know there's people out there, I don't net deck, I hate net decking, blah, 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 blah. There's a reason why some of these decks are played is because they are established as good, dominant decks. I get it. You may want to be the dude that stands out, right? But that's like being a diamond in the rough. You really, really got to know your shit and know what you're deck building towards, what you're trying to beat, all of that stuff. Because realistically, the format right now is Breach or no Breach. You either play Breach or you play a deck that beats Breach. That's where our format's at right now for Modern. And so if you play a deck that can beat Breach, but it can't beat, let's say you play, Eldrazi Ramp, and it can beat Breach, but it loses to Titan and Blink and Energy. You're just hoping that all day you play Breach. And if you don't, you're out. And that's an oppressive format. We don't want that type of format. The type of format we want is more along the lines of like a rock, paper, scissors format, where you have rock beats paper, paper beats scissors, scissors beats... Wait, am I doing this wrong? Rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock. In a sense, Titan beats energy, energy beats ramp, ramp beats Titan. You have this format where the metagame is ever shifting, where 1 week a ramp deck overtakes because everybody's playing Titan. Then the next week, energy overtakes because everybody's playing ramp, and vice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You keep going down the line, right? You have where, as the rubber band is pulled in different directions, it reestablishes itself because it can't get too far away because of how much of the metagame in the field there is. But when you have a deck that just stretches it this way and you're either one end or the other, there's no way of bringing that back. I know some people are like, that's a terrible metaphor. I don't care. The point I'm trying to make is we have a very unhealthy and unbalanced format right now. Yes, you're looking at the screen, you're like, what do you mean? There's like 12 archetypes on this board. There is 12 archetypes or more on this board. But the amount of people playing the different archetypes is well under the amount of people playing Breach. So, surprisingly enough, we get into top 8, and what does top 8 look like? Top 8 is 75% Breach. Now, your argument of like, well, we have a diverse metagame, look at that archetype. I would agree with you if we didn't have 6 Breach decks in the top 8. But instead, we have 3 archetypes in the top 8. If we had 5 archetypes in the top 8, I might agree with you a little bit. But we don't, because Grinding Breach is literally the best deck in the format. We have 1 Titan and 1 energy deck that made it into top 8. Now again, you can come through, look through the top 32 and see what the actual, like the amount of people who made it into the Pro Tour, who qualified for the Pro Tour using Breach. And I haven't looked yet, but I want to say probably 75% of the people out of the 32 probably played Breach. But anyways, we look at this top 8, right? Breach, 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 Titan, Breach, Breach, Energy, Breach. I wonder who won. Oh, Breach, yeah. I may sound sarcastic, but this is the point that I'm trying to make with all of this. We need to make some changes. And it already has been announced that there will be some bannings. March 31st, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what I saw. My thought on what cards should be banned. And I know some people are like, ooh, I know. We need to ban Thassa's Oracle. Wrong. Oh, okay. Jace Wielder Mysteries. Wrong. Oh, okay. Well, then we need to reban Mox Opal or ban Mox Amber. Wrong. Those cards are not the problem. Those cards are not the engine of the deck. Jace and Thassa are the win condition. Amber and Opal, they're mana curves. The Grinding Station and or Underworld Breach is the problem of the deck. Underworld Breach says each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exiles 3 other cards from your graveyard. You may cast cards from your graveyard for their escape cost. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. That last part doesn't matter because when the person plays Breach, they're going off. Okay? Here's the other thing. Grinding Station. Sacrifice an artifact. You have to tap Grinding Station to sacrifice an artifact. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Grinding Station. Here's why I can understand people are like, oh, we need to ban Mox Opal and Mox Amber, right? If you have an Opal in the graveyard and you have an Opal in play, Grinding Station says mill 3 cards. Okay? There's your 3 cards to exile for the escape cost for Mox Opal. Because Opal costs 0. So, you tap your Opal, add your mana, sacrifice it to Grinding Station, go get the other Opal, bring it into play, escape. Whenever an artifact comes into play, untap Grinding Station. So you put this on a loop with Grinding Station, with Underworld Breach out. Here's how we neuter this deck. We eliminate either Grinding Station or Underworld Breach. If we eliminate Grinding Station, you don't have the ability to fill your graveyard as fast, to have the escape cost readily available to recast your opals. If you get rid of, did I say grinding station? Yeah. So if you get rid of Breach, you can fill up your graveyard, you can sacrifice an artifact, but you have no way to recur the cards back over and over. There are ways to do this as a one-time effect, which is, I think, like Second Sunrise and like some other stuff like that. But then you're having to have multiple grind stations out, and then you got to do, multiple like spells in a turn. It's a little bit more convoluted and a little bit harder to do. So my fix to this is we either banned Grinding Station or we banned Underworld Breach. Now, they can ban both, and then we just completely neuter the deck to where neither one is a viable... Both cards are now gone, and this whole playing Thassa's Oracle and Jason all that is out the window, and you got to find a completely new way to use those as win conditions, which is fine. And like I said, I don't think those are the problem. I don't think people going, oh, look, see, you unban Mox Opal, and all of a sudden this is more ridiculous. No, Mox Opal was never the problem. So I honestly believe that they're going to ban either Grinding Station and or Underworld Breach. The thing with Underworld Breach, I don't think it's as broken as Grinding Station. I think the card that should 100% be banned is Grinding Station. Because not only is it an enabler for this deck, it might be enablers for other decks down the road. I think it's a card that should have never been printed in the first place because it's actually really broken, but that's just my own opinion. And the card was printed in 5th Dan. We didn't have the amount of craziness with power creep like we do now to allow this type of shenanigans, for lack of a better word. But anyways, those are my thoughts on that. I think if you take the 310 people who played Breach and force them to play a different deck, I honestly believe they would have filtered out into the top 5 other decks, which would have been Titan, Ramp, Blink, Domain Zoo, and Energy. Because those 5 are the, I guess you could say, the tier 1.5, because they're not tier 2 decks. But because of Breach, they're broken down to tier 1.5. Breach is the clear tier 1. Like, nothing is competing against Breach right now other than itself. And I think once we tear it down a little bit, then you bring all those other decks back up to tier 1. And then we have a much healthier format. But those are my takes on this. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Maybe you think I'm completely wrong and it needs to be Tamiyo. I don't know. Like, let's have a conversation. Comment down below. But remember, please be respectful. These are opinions, people's thoughts, all of these different things. But the true fact here is something needs to be done in Modern, especially with this Breach deck. And so with that, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, stay syrupy, my friends.
Waffles in the morning, syrup sweet and slow.